it's such a refreshing topic to kind of discuss, Mark. I know over years and years, it's just kind of been the offense and the defense has been the afterthought. But I know just really just talking to people and just understanding where Oklahoma needs to go from a maturation perspective overall, just in terms of their team, but then just the excitement about how Oklahoma finished last year and just what they have returning is really exciting to kind of talk about and think about for Oklahoma, coming into the 2021 season. So to your point, big loss up front with Ronnie Perkins certainly was something that I think most expected, specifically on how well he played later in the year coming off of his suspension. But I think the difference in this team, Mark, is that I've heard this a couple of times, and you try and you take it with a little bit of grain of salt. But I've heard some experts saying that from an athletic perspective, Oklahoma's defense looks closer to what you would see as an Alabama or Clemson type defense, kind of coming off the bus type of a look than they've been maybe ever or in a long time. So I think that's, certainly obviously refreshing to kind of talk about and think about from that perspective. But I think I would say that it all starts up front with Isaiah Thomas. Isaiah Thomas was one of the better defensive linemen in the league last year, specifically on the team. I believe he was second on the team in sacks. He was right there with Nick Benito in terms of overall sacks of the year. So really good at getting to the quarterback, either at the defensive end position or the defensive tackle position, where he played probably a little bit more last year at the defensive tackle position. So I think you'll see him move out towards the end a little bit more this year. So I think having him, just the flexibility of him being able to defensive tackle or defensive end is really helpful, just in terms of being able to move players around a little bit. Then from a nose tackle, Perrion Winfrey had a really solid year in his first year, from junior college play. He's a kid that, what you've seen through the offseason, he's a kid that's worked extremely hard. He's put himself in position late last year. He made a ton of plays. He was almost, he got a lot of double teams, specifically late in the year, and he was really overpowering. A lot of times he would bust through some of those double teams. I think that not really the problem, but I think the area of growth for him is being able to finish some of those plays with a tackle, finish some of those plays with a sack, finish some of those plays with really just kind of a dominating play, behind the line of scrimmage. So you got him there. And then I think one of the big wild cards for this team up front is going to be Jalen Redmond. Coming off of the COVID opt-out year, was pretty good. He's only played, he's had a lot of time within the program, but he's only really had one solid year that he's not been injured in some way. Certainly last year wasn't an injury, but even before that. So, his ability to kind of play in the middle of the defensive tackle position will allow Isaiah Thomas to move outside a little bit. So I think that's going to be big for Oklahoma from a depth perspective. So and when you talk a little bit about the depth, at defensive end, another guy that played a lot in the spring game is Reggie Grimes. He'll probably be Isaiah Thomas's primary backup. Didn't play a lot last year. However, was a big time recruit for Oklahoma in the 2020 class. So, he'll be a guy that he'll provide some depth for Oklahoma at the nose tackle position. Josh Ellison played a lot last year. Oklahoma's probably, they've got more depth at the nose tackle position than they've had in 10 or 15 years, because they've got Perrion Winfrey. They've got Josh Ellison, who was another junior college kid last year that played split time with Perrion Winfrey. They have Jordan Kelly, who's another kid that played sparingly last year. And then another name to look out for is Isaiah Coe. He's another junior college guy who's a kid that, we've seen some of his photos, in the spring throughout the summer. And he was a guy that's he absolutely looks the part. Not sure how well he was going to be able to put it together on the field early on, but he's a guy that, coming off of the bus, as we mentioned, he's a guy that's going to play. He'll probably play a little bit. I'm not sure, exactly how much he'll play, depending on how he matures through the season, early on and through the summer camp, fall camp. And then when you look at the other defensive tackle position, I mentioned Jalen Redmond, who's a guy that they like there. Laurent Stokes is another guy who came back for his fifth year. Could have he's a guy that was one of the Big 12 newcomers of the year a few years ago. He's a guy that a lot of people think that could get drafted. So they've got a lot of depth up front, more depth than I think they would be comfortable, going 2, 3, and even some instances 4 deep, with rotating those guys and keeping those guys fresh throughout the game.